All right, good morning, Chair Postman, Member Garrett, staff and guests. The lobbies are open and the recording has begun.
Thanks, Justin. Good morning, everybody. We're going to convene the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board meeting for Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. Member Vollendorf is on leave today. We'll start with approval of meeting minutes. We can do two with one motion from Tuesday, August 30th, 2022 Board Caucus and the Tuesday, November 1st, 2022 Board Caucus.
I move approval of the August 30th, 2022 minutes and the November 1st, 2022 minutes from Board Caucus.
Great, and I'll second, and so those are both approved. And we'll move now into alcohol-related rulemaking action. First up, Mr. Jacobs will present the CR 101 for liquor legislative implementation. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Postman and Member Garrett, members of the public. I'm here this morning presenting the CR 101 on the 2023 liquor legislation implementation and requesting the board's approval for this filing. As I mentioned during yesterday's caucus, this project covers three bills that were passed during the most recent legislative session: House Bill 1730, engrossed substitute House Bill 1731, and House Bill 1772. As a reminder, these bills have been voted on, passed by the legislature, and signed by the governor. So this isn't optional rulemaking per se, more that we are just following through on legislation already passed. And again, to recap, 1730 allows individuals under the age of 21 to work as chefs, cooks, sanitation workers, and in other positions that don't interact with customers or touch alcohol in any way in liquor licensee premises that are typically off limits to those under 21. And it identifies certain conditions under which those folks can work there. 1731 grants permits to owners of short-term rentals, think Airbnb and Vrbo, to allow them to give free bottles of wine to renters as long as they verify the ID in person. They warn the renters about public consumption laws, and they provide an opportunity for renters to decline the free wine. The bill also allows the short-term rental owner to get wine at wholesale in addition to retail. Lastly, 1772 prohibits the sale, manufacture, and gifting of products combining alcohol and THC or cannabis. If approved for filing today, there's going to be a public comment period until June 26th. We're planning on having draft rules and the CR 102 tentatively filed by August 2nd, which would put a public hearing at the end of September. And again, assuming everything goes as planned, we would have rules in effect by November 11th. Based on this, I would ask for your approval to file this CR 101 today. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just have one about 1731, the Airbnb Vrbo. So did you say that people be required to check ID in person before they could do this?
So that is one of the things we're going to explore in rulemaking, but the language of the rule, and I've attached the language of the rule, does say that the rental owner has to be present. And we'll certainly explore this more in rulemaking, but on first glance, that seems to preclude uploading an ID on the app, for instance, and submitting it ahead of time. But certainly if that, as someone who uses Airbnb, I would rather do that if that's an option, but that's certainly going to be one of the things that we explore in rulemaking. But the wording in the legislation seems rather specific, but I don't want to sort of limit our options before we go underway.
Yeah, it's been years since I've actually seen anybody at an Airbnb check-in, right? So that seems like it would require a level of that, but okay. Yeah, that's my only question for now. Any other questions, Member Garrett?
No, you covered what I was going to bring up about the owner being present.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how that works out. Okay, well, then given that, I would entertain a motion to approve the CR 101.
I approve the CR 101.
And I'll second, and that is approved. Okay, thank you, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you. And actually, before I go, I did just want to confirm, as I'm looking at the language of the bill, the wording says that the provision of the complimentary bottle of wine may occur only after an operator or staff person of the short-term rental, and here's the language I was talking about, who is present at the short-term rental property verifies that each rental guest who will consume the complimentary bottle of wine is age 21 or over by checking a valid form of identification.
That's pretty specific.
But thank you.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. Okay, next up, trade areas, and we'll turn to Dr. Kathy Hoffman. Good morning.
Thank you and good morning, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett. This morning, I'd like to ask for your approval to file a CR 101 or pre-proposal statement of inquiry regarding WAC 314-55-1071 that pertains to trade areas. For background, the board adopted this rule in 2013 after alcohol privatization. Because the term trade area wasn't defined in statute, the rule, among other things, defines trade area as an area where there's no spirits retail license within a 20-mile travel distance at the time of application. And so operationally, this meant that after 2013, spirits retail licenses couldn't be located within a 20-mile travel distance of each other. And that matters for new applicants and existing licensees in terms of outlet density and a handful of other factors. The rule provides one exception to this location requirement for applicants seeking licensure in an area or a location where the mode of travel is something other than a car. And that's for locations in island communities that are only accessible by boat. And so now 10 years later, we'd like to explore whether rule revision is needed based on today's demographics and other socioeconomic factors. So for proof for filing today, the comment period on the CR 101 will end on July 7th. And I hope to bring a CR 102 to you by late August, if not sooner than that. And that would set the public hearing date for late September. And under that timeline, we'd be able to bring final rules for your consideration and potential adoption in mid-October with an effective date of mid-November. And so asking for your approval to file the CR 101 today, and happy to answer any questions.
I think it's a good idea, and we should visit this. I would just, and I know this is already part of what you've looked at, but since the board now wasn't here then, as much as you can rebuild for us what that conversation was about and things of that sort would be helpful. And I'd also just be interested in what we've seen in terms of growth of stores and how many times, if we have any idea where somebody couldn't do it because of that trade area restriction. You know what I mean? Just, I'd like get some handle on how big of an issue we're talking about here.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And I will say I've done some reconstruction of the events that led up to the initial rule promulgation. So happy to provide that to the board.
Okay, great. Okay, with that, then, is there a motion to approve the CR 101 on trade areas?
I move that we approve the CR 101 for trade areas.
Great, I second, and that is approved. Thank you, Dr. Hoffman. And then this next one is yours as well, yes?
It is.
Okay, so this is the 102 for implementation of substitute Senate Bill 5448 on liquor license privileges for delivery.
That is correct. And I would like to request your approval to file that CR 102 to implement portions of, I'll just refer to it as SSB 5448. So I'm not saying Senate substitute bill over and over again this morning. And that bill does concern liquor licensee privileges for the delivery of alcohol that Governor Inslee signed into law earlier this month. So for background, in 2021, the legislature codified certain liquor license privileges that were similar to the allowances our agency temporarily provided to liquor licensees during the COVID-19 pandemic through in gross second substitute House Bill 1480, and I'll just refer to that as 1480 from here on out as well. The privileges were set to expire, consistent with 1480, on July 1 of this year. And the CR 102 memo that I provided to the board details our rulemaking on 1480. The CR 101, I'm sorry, the 102 memo on 1480 is attached to the current memo for your reference. So during the 2023 legislative session, the legislature revised the privileges that were codified in 1480 through 5448 in the following ways, and I'll detail those now. Try to keep it brief though. So the temporary liquor license privileges for takeout and outdoor service will become permanent on July 1 instead of expiring on that date. The authorization to sell alcohol products curbside, as well as the authorization for spirits, beer, and wine restaurant licensees to sell cocktail kits with mini bottles for takeout and delivery won't be extended, so those expire. The authorization for specific licensees to sell alcohol products for delivery under the temporary privileges will now be extended, but only until July 1 of 2025. And so while these delivery sales are authorized, the delivery must be performed only by an employee of an alcohol delivery endorsement holder who's 21 or older and holds a Mass 12 permit. And along with that, the signature requirement was extended, meaning that the signature of a person over 21 receiving the delivery must be obtained at the time of delivery. And then finally, the delivery must be accompanied by a purchased meal prepared and sold by the license holder, and alcohol sold as part of the delivery must either be in a factory sealed or tamper resistant container. And so while these provisions are already part of our temporary rules that also are set to expire on July 1, they now become law, at least in part, until July 1 of 2025. So the proposal before you incorporates these provisions into current rule. And so if you look at the proposed text, you'll note that the reference to curbside service, spirits mini bottles, and cocktail kits are proposed to be removed, and the word temporary is removed where appropriate, as is referenced to the rule expiration date of July 1 of this year. We've also added direct reference to 5448 and specific sections of the bill where appropriate. So as I've mentioned, 5448 goes into effect on July 1, and to support regulatory stability and business continuity, we're relying on the exception rule process described in the Administrative Procedure Act that allows agencies to waive pre-notice inquiry or the CR 101 process when adopting law or incorporating it by reference into rule. And that's what we're doing here. The public comment and hearing components of standard rulemaking are the same, and so is final adoption. So to meet the July 1 effective date of 5448 as closely as possible and make sure that these changes are reflected in current rule as soon as possible, our timeline then is slightly different, meaning that if approved today, the public hearing will be held on Tuesday, June 27th at 10 a.m. because there isn't a board meeting scheduled for July 28th, which is typically when we have hearings. And as you know, no board meeting occurs during a public hearing on rulemaking. And June 27th is the earliest that we could host a public hearing under both the APA and code revisor timelines. So this will allow us to bring you a 103 at the regularly scheduled board meeting of July 5th. And if approved, the adopted rules would become effective immediately upon filing. So I'll stop there, ask for any questions, and for your approval to file the CR 103 today, or 102 today.
Clarification for me. So right now, the temporary rules are saying that the delivery has to be by an employee of the licensee?
I believe that they do, yes.
So how does DoorDash
Yeah.
and Uber and all of that fit into this?
There, that was, and we might have to ask someone from licensing to come in, but to provide a response to that. But I believe that third-party delivery was allowed.
Okay, so are
As
we
well.
saying that stays allowed? What are we saying here? Because the way you just stated it, it said delivery by employee of licensee only.
Right, third-party delivery was allowed under 1480 as I understand it, but I can clarify that and get back to you.
Yeah, and prior to 1480, in our temporary COVID era, yes. And what my understanding, there's a question mark, I mean, to be clear then, but what this bill does and what the rules will implement removes the ability to use a third-party delivery.
That is
company,
correct.
Correct?
Correct.
I think that's the meat of this in a lot of ways is that it is put more in the hands of the licensee.
That's right.
Um,
And that's one of the reasons that the signature was important and making sure that that delivery occurred by someone who is working under the license of one of our licensees.
And so, yeah, Ollie, go ahead. I'm sorry, I don't want to.
No, I just still, I'm trying to understand it because we're saying here, we're taking away delivery of alcohol from our licensee when it comes to the third-party delivery services, but we're not stopping the other places you could click on to get alcohol delivery by a third-party license service.
No, I don't think you'll be allowed to use a third party. Uber Eats, for example, would not be allowed to deliver alcohol. My understanding is once this becomes effective. Do I have that right? Do you know, Dr. Hoffman?
So the Wine and Moores and all of those other
They-
places that pop up, they won't have delivery services anymore?
They can deliver if it's their employees who are conducting that service.
As I understand it, Justin's got his hand
Wait,
raised.
somebody's, Justin, yeah.
Yeah,
Hold on one sec, Justin. Dustin is finding you here. Okay, you should be able to go ahead.
Hi, good morning,
Good morning.
Chair Postman and Member Garrett. So just for some clarification around the bill and what we have in rules. So we have two different pathways for home delivery of alcohol. One is for the restaurants, on-premise locations that had the privilege to then sell off-premise and delivery. That was with 1480. And then we have the grocery store licenses or spirit retail licenses who have been delivering by rule, and that was not in 1480. And so what we have with this particular package is just to align with the current statute, which the 1480 provisions for those on-premise locations utilizing a third party for delivery, that goes away. But it doesn't affect right now the grocery stores or spirit retailers like the Total Wines and More for selling the way that they have. So, you know, what we're trying to do in this particular rule package is to align with the current statute so there's clarity. And then the policy discussions around what that should look like, I think for the grocery stores may have to come at a later time if there's an interest in that policy discussion. But right now it's they are separate. So you still have third party on the grocery side as well as the spirit retailers. And then as of July 1, no longer allowing third-party delivery from the off-premise locations, restaurants, and the like. So that's why there's some confusion in that, and we get a lot of questions on this. So I hope that helps clarify, and I'm happy to answer any questions for you.
So are we doing this based on rule, or was it legislation that said take it away from the restaurants?
Yeah, this is a piece of legislation. So
Okay.
5448 passed.
Right, okay.
To solidify some of the or some of the allowances, but they took away that third-party delivery option and made it so only employees of those restaurants can deliver. And so that's where the difference is and why we're trying to align with the statute that just passed. And so it's not our policy decision that we're trying to implement, it's the legislatures that passed.
Okay, that clears that. Thank you for the clarification.
You bet.
which goes back to what Dr. Hoffman was talking about on the timing of this. I mean, we have limited leeway here. We're implementing legislation and making some rules that were temporary, just adopting them as written, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay,
We
all
are.
right. I think I've got it. Okay, all right. Any other questions on this one? Okay, if not, then is there a motion to approve the CR 102 for implementation of substitute Senate Bill 5448 concerning liquor license privileges for delivery of alcohol?
I move approval of the CR 102 for all of what you just said.
Excellent. And I seconded that as approved then. Thank you, Dr. Hoffman.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin, for helping us clarify there. There are some very nuanced and complicated pathways here.
Yeah. And,
Thanks
and this
again.
is the conversation that took place all through the session. I think it was, yeah, a long winded tale, but thank you. Okay, and that takes us to a general public comment period for the board meeting. Everyone gets 4 minutes to speak. Do your best to limit comments to LCB business and refrain from any kind of personal attacks or going off topic into things unrelated to what we do here. I'll mention if I think speakers wandered too far. Everyone be respectful to the speakers while they're speaking and anybody else who's present, whether virtually or in person. We don't want any disruption of the meeting. If we have any disruption, we'll just pause the meeting and fix it. Please remember, everything's being recorded, of course, because it's a public meeting. It'll be available online later today. If you're in the room here, we just always remind people to be really sensitive about noise because the microphones here pick up paper rustling and other things while people are talking. We got 2 people signed up online, and as always, just give us a second to connect you. Dustin will find you on the list and give you the click there. When you've got 30 seconds left in your comments, Dustin will jump in and remind you of that. Then we'll ask you to wrap up right at 4 minutes. And we'll begin with those who have registered virtually. And the first person is David Busby.
Things working okay here?
You bet. Good morning.
Awesome, thanks. I'm here to talk about CCRS and the DDE setup. There's a bit of a problem with the data that we put into CCRS in that the reporting system doesn't know where the materials came from. And I have a bit of a suggestion that will take more than 4 minutes on how to put some improvements into the CCRS system so that it would be able to track these conversion steps and some product history or inventory history where it came from. I understand that the LCB was having some problems getting records from licensees when they were attempting to do some product recall. And this would, I think the word is ameliorate that kind of issue. I think, that's really all I had to say. Who should I send that to? And Mr. Postman, you're in my address book. Is it okay if I just start with you?
That'd be great. And then I can send it to the right staff people. That's just what I was going to suggest.
Cool, thanks, that's it.
Excellent, great. Thank you, David. Next person we have signed up is Christopher King. All right, Mr. King.
Here.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Terrific.
Good morning.
Great. Good morning. I won't keep you too long. Just a couple of points of light that I've seen in other jurisdictions that I think are germane to this jurisdiction. I noted a couple of weeks ago, there was a situation. It seems like Washington just goes on in its own vacuum of law and fact when it comes to cannabis operations. We had my black friends that were in court, and the judge told them that there was all these things they were talking about were very unlikely and improbable. And, we have this situation in Oregon where the Secretary of State resigned amid cannabis consulting controversy, and because they were a public official that was engaged in there's a contract she signed with a cannabis company while in office, and helping to work in that milieu, as a public official, and then doing consulting on the side. So that's a questionable area. And I think that proves as much. So, I sit here and tell people criticize me all they want to. I don't really care. The facts are the facts. And so it's not outlandish to think that could be a conflict of interest when you have people working in the public arena and also helping out, like say at Tabor 100. And again, that issue was not brought to public fair by me. It was brought by someone else who was trying to criticize me, actually. That's the irony of it. When you point one finger at somebody, you got several coming back at you. So that's just the facts right there. Yeah. And her name is Shima Fagan. That's her name. And so that was interesting there too. But then I have another one, which is even more on point right now. And this one pertains to the fake security company. All right, this is a good one here. There's a security company that was accused of hiring imposter police officers that was linked to the embattled police department. And the commissioner said, I can already tell that monkey business is going on and I'm sick of it. All right. And this was in March. And it was Chad Parton is the post commissioner. And this was the thin blurred line is the headline of this, published May 11th out of Nashville, Tennessee. It became very clear at the March 25 meeting at the post commission that its tolerance with one police department had reached its limit. These laws are not going to be violated. At issue, an investigation found not only was the Millersville interim police chief Melvin Brown Jr. uncertified, but so was Assistant Chief Glenn Allred. Okay, so with you guys, you've got all these uncertified officers, that haven't even worked for a law enforcement agency, which I have, and you're going to commission them under this plan that was set forth by Roger Goodman, a lawyer. Okay, and you're just going to slap a badge on these guys, and these guys are the same guys that went out in the field and mingled with local jurisdictions to taint the minority community. That was all these clandestine plans that went out. They all came out during the Art West litigation, in which you guys paid him handsomely to go shut up and buy his house that he brags about on the waterfront. Just
Christopher, you have 30 seconds.
Thanks. So that's a problem there. And so it's serious business, they said. So without certification, a police officer in Tennessee cannot work in full-time law enforcement. And you guys know that the LCB is a regulatory agency. It's not a law enforcement agency, ab initio. Okay, so all these other jurisdictions are coming out and proving what I've been saying all along. And I'm just going to leave you with that and wish you a good day. I have to get back to work. Bye-bye.
Good day. Yeah, thank you. And we have one person signed up in person, and that's Gregory Foster.
Good morning, Chair Postman, Member Garrett. It's good to see you today. I wanted to come and talk with you a little bit about the DDX situation, emergency, and just sort of ask some questions, put some stuff out there. So the announcement was made April 6th by Ms. Wax, who's here in the room with us. And we had 18 licensees that had their administrative hold put on their licenses. It seemed like a big deal. And a week later, an emergency rulemaking effort was canceled. You had stakeholder meetings a couple of days later and a follow-up announcement that kind of reinforced the course of action that had been laid out. And then we heard on April 18th, Ms. Wax also provided an update during the board caucus, a pretty comprehensive update, which indicated that agency staff, along with collaboration with other agencies and their staff members, had collected soil and water samples, and that would take about 30 days to get those processed. And so that was over a month ago. And since that time, all that we've heard publicly from the board or during public meetings was during a May 10th EMT meeting, kind of some incidental updates. And we have Mr. Webster here, also the legislative director for the agency, and want to thank you for going to bat for the budget provisos. In 5187, we had $200,000 that WSDA is actively going to be giving out for soil remediation efforts. They have that posted on their website, so they're moving forward with that, despite the swiftiness in the language as far as who it would apply to. And then also there's in SB 5200, the capital budget, there's the $5 million ecology pilot program. And I noted on that one, it's contingent for that to move forward. It says if the Liquor and Cannabis Board determines the soil in the pilot program location, which is in Okanagan County, produce cannabis products that meet or exceed state action levels of 0.1 part per million. So it's up to y'all to make the call whether that program moves forward. And so that's sort of uncertain there, like how are you going to make the call? Can we know if that is actually moving forward? Because that's a big deal. You know, it's $5 million that could be put to good use. Really, I'm coming forward just to ask that we continue to provide some public updates as far as what is actually going on that the agency is doing around this piece. You know, the soil and water samples should be, you should have some results back, and kind of wondering, has the agency actually expanded its search beyond this one small area, since we know that the usage of DDT was widespread.
30 seconds, Gregory.
Around the state. We also saw there was additional recalls of processors that are not in Okanagan County, so kind of wondering about the wholesale supply chain and implications there. Really happy to see Ms. Hoffman putting together the cannabinoid science work group to talk about this, especially around pyrolysis of cannabis products and whether that's an issue with DDX, and research of uptake of pesticides in the flowers.
Gregory, that's time.
And please follow up with that AP reporter who put out a kind of, you know, big deal upon the initial piece, since, you know, it's kind of stigmatizing if we don't actually know what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it is, we could certainly do a general update, and Chandra and I will talk about that and find a time to do that in the near future. Maybe at next week's caucus.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, why don't we do that? And appreciate those questions. Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda for today. Unless anybody, Member Garrett, anything that we've forgotten or that you want to add? Okay. Neither. Then with that, then we'll adjourn the board meeting for May 24th, 2023. And our next meeting then is the caucus next Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Oh, yeah, we got a short one this afternoon, but yes. Yeah. Okay. Next general meeting will be there. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.